People, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This week in Cincinnati on WCPO 9.
Welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Tanya O'Rourke. Today we're going to cover issues from the Brent Spence Bridge to solar power. But first, we would like to bring you two reports from a series WCPO 9 News did this week on the pandemic, the vaccine, and race. Lisa Smith looked at the struggles Black seniors have faced, but we start with Larry Seward. He talked to influencers, popular with millennials and Gen Z, and tapped into the debate you need to see.
Club DJ and 101.1 The Wiz on-air personality.
Yo, what up, though, man? It's DJ J-Do, the live.
Corey and Wilson holds beliefs.
I feel like it was a rushed process.
About coronavirus vaccine shared by enough peers.
I also have my sister in here with me, Miss Tropicana.
That friend and fellow DJ, Tropicana, works overtime to remix.
Is she on you?
Yeah, she's on me heavy. Like, you know what? Just shut up and get the vaccine. And I'm like, wait a minute. We don't know what's going to happen. It don't matter. You're not going to get COVID.
I find myself talking about COVID to people every day now because it's just something that I am really passionate about. And I just want to educate my peers so that we can move forward, like, as a community.
Every other weekend, Trop co-moderates vaccine town halls, and online, she's anything but shy with her 33,000 Instagram followers, whom she interviewed to give us a sense of the challenge public health officials face vaccinating millennials and zillennials.
I want to know your honest opinion.
For real, this COVID is something serious. If I wasn't 25, and I could go get that, I would be there.
As a realtor, I was essential, so I've been moving around anyway during this whole thing. And, I encounter a lot of people, right? So my mom had heart surgery in October, and I pretty much take care of her. So I don't want to get something and then bring something back to her,
I'm getting a whole lot of no's. Y'all don't want to get this vaccine. Do y'all just want to stay in the house forever? Or y'all just really not comfortable with the idea of the vaccine?
I can't get no vaccine, though.
Why you can't? Tell me why.
I think I already had COVID-19 for one, so I think that it's going to be pointless. But vaccines, you can opt out of vaccines and still live.
Nobody wants to catch COVID, or nobody's really out here feeling like they're Superman and they can't get it. We got to wait and see the outcome before we just go out and inject the vaccine in our bodies. That's the problem with a lot of young people, where it's like we don't have enough facts to go off of. Once I find out, more information about it and see the effects it has on different people, then yeah, I definitely think about getting it. But right now, it's a no for me.
My initial thought was, I don't want to take this vaccine and I don't want to catch COVID. And it was the same thing as everyone else, kind of just looking on social media and saying they coming up with this too fast and, the things that they say. I think that in this culture, we are at a huge battle with misinformation from social media. The doctor who created the vaccine this time is a Black woman. She's 34 years old. She's us. I have a 5-year-old now, and he was born prematurely. I wanted to educate myself so that I could be proactive in protecting my baby. It's so important that you do the research yourself to learn and take advantage of these resources that are available to you.
J-Do believes in education and masks, but needs time if he's ever going to change his mind. Larry Seward, WCPO 9 News.
The Hamilton County Board of Elections has been one place to go for the COVID-19 vaccine, but some residents are getting their vaccines without even leaving their vehicles.
People do fine with the vaccine.
Seniors like Barbara Nichols.
As long as I don't look at the needle, I'm good.
And Vanessa Tye.
It seemed like it took us a long time for them to get back to us with the shot, because I had been put in for it, but a lady called me on the phone and told me to come on down. The bus was outside waiting.
About 2 buses a week take seniors to the Board of Elections vaccine site. It's one way to close the gap between residents of senior apartment buildings and the vaccine.
I made up my mind because I'm an active person. I like to go. And I said, well, maybe if I take it, that would protect me.
For many seniors, there are 2 obstacles that keep them from getting the vaccine: transportation and technology.
Transportation has been another barrier, and we've been providing from the beginning free transportation for any senior who is unable to get to a vaccine appointment themselves.
The Council on Aging is among the agencies working to help seniors get access to the access. Strategies like transportation and registration at their buildings keep them from falling through the cracks. The Urban League has stepped in to help too.
We hear about folks that are trying to access the scheduling via online, and the digital divide is really a barrier for a lot of folks in our community.
Cinnamon Pelly with the Urban League says they developed this form to connect people to registration. They've turned the information over to local health departments, which has resulted in over 500 vaccine appointments. Local jazz artist Kathy Wade was one of them.
The process with the Urban League, once I signed up, the next thing that I got back was, now pick a time, and this is the location that you're probably going to end up at.
Local and national statistics show a disparity in African Americans getting the vaccine. In some cases, it's access barriers. In others, it's trust.
There was a lot of angst and fear around not being the target of unscrupulous practices.
But those who have gotten the shot are encouraging others.
If this is the solution, then we have to step up and take it. Because we can't get to the other side unless we're all getting there together.
Lisa Smith, WCPO 9 News.
Welcome back. A few weeks ago on This Week in Cincinnati, the president of the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, Brent Cooper, presented the case for replacing the Brent Spence Bridge and why, after all these years, we could be on the cusp of doing just that. But the mayor of Covington sees it differently. Joseph Meyer says it's clear something has to be done about traffic on that bridge, but says the current plan to replace the Brent Spence would be terrible for his city. We spoke with him about that at length.
Current Brent Spence Bridge corridor plan is absolutely devastating to the city of Covington, its residents, and its businesses. Starting with simple things like the scale of the proposed bridges, where basically the plan calls for quadrupling the landing space in Covington for the Brent Spence Bridge. And I take that 42-foot concrete pavement bridge that we have and add to it another bridge that's got 128 feet of pavement, and imagine the impact that that has on our Covington community. I mean, I-75 many years ago was a severe blow to the integrity of the city, and this pushes it over the edge. And the size of it is one thing, but it's not the only thing. You know, the next issue that's confronting Covington specifically is the whole concept of diversion. We know there will be a lot of diversion during the construction period, and that'll be bad enough. But if tolls are part of the funding equation, then the studies that were performed by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet indicated that about 77,000 cars each day would get off of I-75 to avoid the tolls. And that large number of cars puts immense stress on our existing infrastructure. And there are no resources to pay for upgrading our infrastructure. And I don't know if you can put a price on the destruction of quality of life. This project is really consists of three parts. The approach in Kentucky to the bridge, that's going to cost about 630 million. The bridges, plural, themselves, about 700 million. And then the Ohio approaches from the Ohio River back to, I don't know, 1,500 yards, or anyway, a little bit north of the Western Hills Viaduct. That's going to cost well over $1 billion. Okay. Well, if people from Kentucky want to go to downtown Cincinnati, they pay a toll. Okay. If people from Cincinnati want to drive on the most expensive part of this project to go to downtown Cincinnati, they pay no toll. Okay. The local traffic crossing the bridge is 65% Northern Kentuckians. Okay. So, and the plan is that 60% of the tolls derived from crossing the bridge would be paid to Ohio to pay for their share of this project. Now, how on earth is it fair for Northern Kentuckians to bear the brunt of the cost for improving an interstate in Ohio when the people from in Ohio are free riders? They're free riders. They're riding on the back of a project paid for mostly by Kentuckians, and they're not contributing a penny. I think that's a horrible and a significant equity issue that needs to be addressed. The current predicament that we're in is the result of years and years of failed planning. You don't put three interstates, I-71, I-74, and I-71 on one single bridge. That is a recipe for disaster. We need to separate I-71 from I-75. And can that be done? Yes, it can. We could take I-71 to I-275, run it over to I-471, and straight over across I-471 to I-71. And that would mean decoupling the Fort Washington Way from I-75. And I will point out that the assumptions that are now, 15, 20 years old are acknowledged to be outdated. The traffic projections for the I-75 bridge are considerably lower than they were 5 or 10 years ago. So much has changed in the way of technology, in the progress of the transportation capacity. Just 2 weeks ago, Mark Polisinski from OKI was talking to the Covington Business Council about self-driving cars and about how the advent of this technology will significantly increase the capacity of our current network without adding an extra lane, without widening an extra lane, without building another bridge. Well, maybe ideas like that ought to be taken into consideration when this project is redesigned. And it absolutely needs to be redesigned because, like I say, we'll start with the basic premise. The scale of that bridge, those bridges on Covington, is unforgivably horrible. The rest of the nation is reducing the impact of interstates in their urban core, and then this one proposes to quadruple the amount of space that it takes when it lands in Covington. That's not the future, that's the past. This is a decision that we're going to be dealing with for 50, 75 years. Can't we do it right?
Welcome back to This Week in Cincinnati. There is a dramatic change taking place in how Ohio gets its electricity. Solar power sites are springing up all across the state, and especially in southwest Ohio. Last year, solar plants barely generated 100 megawatts of power. By the middle part of this decade, that could be up to 5,000 megawatts. To learn more about this change and what it means for all of us, I spoke this week with Dan Sawmiller with the Natural Resources Defense Council. Dan Sawmiller, thank you so much for spending some time with us to explain a little bit more about this solar age that we're in. So right now, we know that there are several projects all across Ohio in general, but specifically in Southwest Ohio, there are around 6 projects. Some of them don't have approval yet that are popping up. And some of these are pretty large projects. We'll get into those details in just a second, but why do you think there's suddenly this surge in not only solar power, but, we're seeing even automakers, now switching over to, hey, we're just going to make electric cars by this certain date. This just seems to be a major wave. Why do you see this in Ohio?
Yeah, really interesting. You had mentioned the auto sector. There's a lot of activity going on there, and Ohio is actually pretty well positioned to build out its battery manufacturing supply chain. And that whole supply chain is demanding renewable energy. And so corporate demand from the auto sector and really every sector of the economy is driving a lot of these renewable energy additions all around the country. But when you look at Ohio specifically, the first thing I'll say is the price of large-scale solar projects like these have declined nearly 90% over the last decade. It's one of the cheapest forms of generating electricity that we have today. And the folks that are buying this can lock into low fixed price energy contracts for a period of decades. And so it really brings certainty to business. But in Ohio, and particularly in the southern portion, I think you said there were 6 projects. I think there might be even more than that. But it has to do with the flat tillable land that we have, which is very well suited for solar development projects like this. We've also have existing transmission infrastructure that was there and used by our coal facilities that have been retiring over the last decade. So there's new capacity on those lines to bring on new generation and do it cost effectively. Then you add to that the overwhelming support from Ohio farmers. There was a poll recently that showed 2/3 of Ohio farmers really welcome this activity. It gives them opportunities to diversify their income, preserve their farmland, and these sort of things. So when you tie all that together, Ohio becomes a really, really attractive state for solar development.
Clearly, for so many farmers, depending on what they happen to be growing, what industry they're tied to, farmers have struggled for years for a variety of reasons. Talking about that farmland, two projects, Highland County and Hecate, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, has actually contracted with the city of Cincinnati, and Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley has spoken about this. And this would be the largest municipal farm. We're talking 310,000 solar panels, at least at the last numbers I looked at, covering is it 1,000 acres for that project? I think that is a lot of land to cover, and obviously there's some concern about seeing 1,000 acres covered in solar panels.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing I'll key in on is seeing it. There's a lot of great things you can do with solar development from a pedestrian standpoint. You can do vegetative screening and setbacks when you develop these projects. And that's what the developers do. They'll go in, they'll work with the landowners, they'll work with the neighboring landowners, and they'll look at where is this project going to be compared to where you live, where you drive down the road, and these sorts of things. And they can set these projects back from major roads, back from residential property, and then they can install vegetative screening, and the projects can effectively disappear. And after the temporary construction process, there's no noise, there's no pollution, there's no water discharge, there's no increased traffic for these facilities. And so it's really about as benign of a resource as you can have in terms of the use of this land. And while it sounds like a lot of acres, a lot of farmers are able to carve out a portion of their farm and put it into solar development and then maintain other areas of their ground to continue farming. It just gives more stability to the revenue of their farm to keep it in production.
It still becomes a dance between solar, which then lessens the reliance on coal plants and nuclear plants and what have you, but there's still a dance that has to take place here because you're still going to need those other electric plants.
Yeah, that's right. That's something that's been evolving over time. So Ohio is a part of a 13-state grid. All of our transmission infrastructure is connected among 13 different states, and PJM is the organization that manages that. And so they're responsible for ensuring reliable provision of electricity to consumers in these states, including in Ohio. And so they're managing these resources and turning things on and off as the supply is there to meet demand at any given time. And they carry a pretty healthy reserve margin to make sure that if a plant wasn't operating or wasn't available for any given reason, that there's reserve capacity to continue to meet our demand. But as this grows and this industry continues to proliferate, you're going to see more renewable energy supply, and with battery technology, PJM is able to manage that to make sure that we always have power when we need it.
So, Mr. Sawmiller, real quick, what's a website people can go to find out more details about what's going on in Ohio?
Well, you can go to, I have a blog that I keep where I try to inform folks on what's going on in this industry. It's at nrdc.org. You can search for my name and find us. And there's also a group in the state called the Utility Scale Solar Energy Coalition. They're at ohiosolarcoalition.com, I believe. And you can get a lot of information about this industry and sort of where they're active on their website.
All right. And just to let the viewers know, we did ask the state regulators to speak on this topic as well, but they said they couldn't speak right now due to pending legal proceedings. Mr. Dan Sawmiller, Natural Resources Defense Counsel, thank you so much for spending some time with us here. I know it's been brief, but hopefully folks will seek out some additional information online.
Yeah, I appreciate being here. Thank you for inviting me.
This Week in Cincinnati, I'll be right back.
Vaccine eligibility will expand across the tri-state on Monday. In Ohio, anyone older than 16 can now get a shot. In Kentucky and Indiana, everyone 40 and older becomes eligible. Indiana's mask mandate will also end April 6th, but the mask rules remain in place for now in Ohio and Kentucky. That's all for This Week in Cincinnati this weekend anyway. So please join us for breaking news, weather, and sports at 6 and 11 tonight on WCPO 9 News. And we're always updating your headlines on WCPO.com.